I'm admitting
Recording in progress.
admitting them all. I can't stop admitting them all.
Wow.
I've come to see Heidi and
Oh my
I'm admitting
goodness.
them
Hi,
all.
Julia Rose.
Oh, got
Diane's
it.
there. Oh, hi, Suzanne.
Hey,
Wow.
Diane.
Everyone's here.
Everyone's here that should be here. Do-da-da-dee-da-doo-doo-da-dee-da-doo.
Nice shirt.
Nice shirt? Who says that?
Suzanne said that to Amy.
It's nice, isn't it?
Amy said to Suzanne, thank you.
Yeah, well, it's almost polka dots. Not quite.
Thanks. I found it at a thrift shop. I would like to tell you it was madder root. I could have lied, but I didn't. This is not naturally dyed.
Yeah.
You know what I wish? You know what I wish?
What?
I wish that everybody could have been here about 15 minutes ago to see our wild and wacky things we can do with our bodies that Heidi, Kathy.
Oh no, we're not going back there.
Kathy?
No.
She didn't let us in.
Yeah, well,
for good reason.
Heidi is has more talents than Ochre. That's all I'll say. Ochre whispering, Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah.
That's all you need to know.
We'll go no further with that discussion.
That's all you need to know.
I could show them.
No, no, Heidi, no.
Okay, all right.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure.
You sure?
I'm sure,
How
yeah.
about the more simple one?
Yeah.
Ooh, awesome.
See, it just keeps getting better. I
That's
do have you on
good.
spotlight if you want to do anything while I'm admitting
No.
people. This is being recorded, which is the best part of this entire moment.
Ochre welcome tune.
That's right. The Ochre theme song.
I was also thinking about this morning. I was thinking to myself, we should have a contest to see who could do the best cover of the Feedback Friday song. It could be that you're doing it with your hands, simulating a loon.
Hello, Amy.
You could do what, Kathy?
Time to start, Amy.
It is?
Yeah.
There's still a lot of people coming in. I'm
letting them in.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, just give me a moment. Oh boy. Hold on. Yep. Just a moment, Kathy. I forgot to turn something off.
Rewind.
All right. Here we are. It's Friday. Some of you look really straight-faced. I am looking at you all, but get ready.
It's like romper room.
Okay. I think I'm supposed to say, I almost just forgot, but there's somebody out there right now who wrote us the nicest letter, Kathy, about how she was getting over her surgery, watching Feedback Fridays, her cancer surgery.
Wow.
And I hope she's here, and I hope this one makes her feel good. All right, here we go.
Well, it's the end of the week. Now where you been? Well, now it's Feedback Friday, so come on in. Come sit down and stare at your screen. We got a presenter that you never seen. We're Feedback Friday, we're on the loose. We'll be the train, you be the caboose. It's Feedback Friday with Kathy and Amy. Mashed potatoes and the gravy. It's Feedback Friday all day long. Feedback, Feedback, Feedback Friday.
And good morning. Oh my goodness, it's Friday. We're back. Welcome to Botanical Colors Feedback Friday. This is episode 69. I can't believe it. We've done this for so many weeks and months, and now it's turning into plural years. That's incredible. My name's Kathy Hattori. I'm the president of Botanical Colors, and joining me is Amy Dufault, our Director of Sustainability and Communications. And together we are co-hosting our weekly show where we speak with artists, dyers, scientists, writers, scholars, ochre whisperers about our favorite topic, natural dyeing and color. Today we have Heidi Gustafson. Heidi is an artist and ochre worker based in the Cascade foothills of beautiful Washington State in rural northern Washington. She's not that far away, but her world is a very different world. Her collaborative ochre and iron research projects include work with scientists, anthropologists, linguists, indigenous practitioners, citizen foragers, healers, artists, and places around the planet. Heidi's current projects focus on ochre, iron oxides, and land pigments, and her cabin studio houses the Ochre Sanctuary, a council of ochres and pigments from contributors worldwide. But before we start, I just want to say thank you, everybody. It has been an amazing 69 plus weeks of us getting together and meeting amazing people. We couldn't do it without you. So thank you very, very much. For a little housekeeping, Amy is going to be the moderator on this chat, on this call, and she will manage the chat, which we will open up after Heidi's presentation. Heidi's giving us plenty of time to ask questions, so enjoy that. And what else? Oh, the call's being recorded. We'll have a video copy available for you after the call. And for now, if everybody could please mute, that would
Thanks,
be
Kathy.
great. Let's see, any other information about the call and questions that we have links to, we will go ahead and add those to the email when we send it out regarding, and the post when we send it out regarding Heidi's presentation. So with all that, we are going to welcome Heidi. Thank you so much for joining us. And we're really, really anxious to hear what you have to say. Are you ready?
Sure, let me
Okay.
share my screen.
All
All right, great.
We'll do it.
Do it.
Well, I shared it, and now it's here. Hi, am I live now? Is it
You
in?
are live and beautiful.
Hi, it's so sweet. I was seeing names of some of my friends coming up and people who've contributed. So hi. Also, I think out there I saw my undergrad advisor, who his name is Hugh Pocock. And if you are out there, hi, I miss you. And I'm just so grateful because he's like the most genius artist who taught me so many things when I was a child. And so he's like a big reason I'm able to do what I do. So anyways, my plan is just to take you through my world and kind of bring you into my studio. I'm not at my studio because I don't have high-speed internet there. So I brought a bunch of photos to my computer to you. And that's what I'm gonna go through. And then, yeah, I think I'm going to bring you into the world, sort of show you what I'm up to, give you a sense of what this Ochre Sanctuary is, which is really my home and a tiny pinprick on Earth. It's not really some big museum. It's nothing as grandiose as it sounds. It's actually very small and very simple. But yeah, and then we'll have lots of rooms to I'm going to give you a bunch of images, and then we'll sort of come back together and say, well, what of this do you really want to talk about? What's juicy, what would be nourishing, that kind of thing. Does that sound good? Okay, cool. Well, let's go through some images, and I'll talk a little bit about what ochre is and that sort of jam. Can you see my screen? Cool. Okay. So these are ochres. These are all from the Pacific Northwest, and I just wanted to sort of start off with maybe a definition of ochre for some people who don't know what that is, or maybe have heard the word and think about it in a particular way. I have a particular definition of it. So let me just, actually, why don't I show you where I live first before I get into my definition? This is, if you were to come visit me, this is what you drive by. This is the Cascade Mountains. And the far left in white is a volcano, Mount Baker, that also has glaciers on it. And then these are the twin sisters. So if you know the TV show, The Twin Peaks, which is kind of like a cult favorite, these are the mountains that are kind of one of the inspirations for that. But you sort of you keep driving off to the left of this image, and then you get to my house. which is, oops, sorry. This is my little zone. And so I'm in right at the foothills of those mountains in those cedar woods, and I'm on ancestral Nooksack land. And it's just this tiny little like 900 square foot cabin that I share land with my neighbor. And this is my studio. So the window you're looking into is where all of this ochre lives. And that is it. Okay, so actually, yeah. So this, when you come into my realm, this is what you will see. And I live, this is where I eat, this is where I work, this is where my cat runs around. And these are all ochres, right? And ochres, to me, they're all geologic materials, right? So they come from the surface of the earth. They're rocks, they're clays, they're minerals. They are soils, they're dust, and they're essentially like the skin of the earth that's kind of come out of the heart of the earth. But ochres themselves, like I think a lot of people think about them as being just these red and yellow earthy materials, red, yellow, brown, and that they're not really a full spectrum. But to me, ochres cover this huge range of colors. And it's because elementally, ochres are actually made of iron and oxygen. And so some of you who know my work this will be really familiar to you, but ochres are essentially like any geologic material where there's a seed syllable of iron and oxygen held within that geologic material. And so that can be anything from hematite, which is the stone that makes red ochre, to vivianite, which has iron and oxygen in it and is a blue ochre, those blues you see down there, but it also has other presence of other elements like phosphorus. So these all ochres tell stories of the relationship between iron and oxygen and humans and earth. And so just to say, like, when you're thinking about ochres, I think a lot of people, it's fair to say that it's largely red and yellow ochres, but I'm trying to really have an expanded definition of what that is, focused more on the deep elements within these geologic materials. And so just to kind of go through this list real quick to cover a little bit more about what ochres are, they can be formed anywhere on Earth, and they come from all like the time periods of from Earth's creation until now. So you can get ochres that are like 3 billion years old, and you can get ochres that were made yesterday, like rust, for example, is a kind of ochre that can be made today. And then you can get these ochres that are made from volcanic material. You can get ochres that are made from bacteria that produce it out of their bodies. You can get ochres that are made from the mineralization of plant material. So you can ochres move the biological into the geological. And so there's all these like webs of things that are going on that ochres can show and talk about. But yeah, so they're everywhere on the planet. Most landscapes have access to an ochre somewhere in their land. And that means that one of the things about ochres is that most cultures across time have worked with ochre. And in the archaeological community and in our own lineage story as a species, ochre has been used in a living lineage by us and our ancestors for like 300 to 500,000 years, according to archaeologists. And also, like, if you go deep inside, you kind of know that ochre has been around with us for a long time. And ochres are the material that we first made marks in caves with. They're the material that allowed us to be protected by the sun, their sun protectant. So it gave a lot of potential for migration early on. And it has all these cool things. I'm not going to go into all of that. I just want to say that it, just to get this out there, that ochres, of course, are really diverse. They talk about our origin stories. They have a deep ancestral connection. They're very connected to the story and the evolution of the planet as much as us. And I kind of think about them as portals to a lot of these different things, to our histories, to stories about other times and places, to deep time, and to our ancestral worlds, and also nonverbal language. It's a really, what I've noticed as an ochre person who's talked to a lot of people who work with ochre in different traditions and from different times, ochre is a shared language. It's sort of like a nonverbal, not original language, but it's one of the languages that we can communicate to each other through without having to necessarily speak about it. And that's one of the things I love a lot. Okay, so that's ochre. And now come back to my studio. That's me, blah, blah, blah. Like I'm at my table, you're in here, and I'm like telling you, this is my vision of ochre, but this is what it really looks like. It's just some shelves and all of these ochres that have come to me from my friends and from people I don't know and my own foraging practice. And this is, I'm gonna kind of take you around through my studio. So there's several of these places where the ochres are resting. And when I see this, I kind of am looking at it as organized by different elemental densities, sort of. So which of these has the most iron in them, are all kind of held together? Which of these are all from the same place? They kind of want to stay together. So we can, again, we can get into any of these things more, but I'm just going to show you around. So come, these are several ochres that are in my space. Here's a little close-up of one of the shelves that has purple ochres and blue ochres, vivianites and magnesium-rich soils and clays and celadonites and glauconites and green earths. But you can see it's not like a shelf on a museum that's very clean and very organized. It's meant to be alive and moving, and things are passing through this space. Like I'll get ochres that come in and then they go out and they get moved to a shelf and then they get moved somewhere else. These are all kind of like altars, is maybe another way to think about it. Here's another one. And here's one that has a lot of materials and ochres that have come to me from other continents than from where I live. So they're all sort of, again, like when they're just, I might have one pebble from one place, and that is like having a portal to that landscape and to the person that sent that to me. And there's a story behind each of these materials. And these are some photos that have been out in the world also of my studio. They're different, again, different ways that I think with ochres, that I organize them, that they can reflect back, and they can also have their own kind of council of together. And so these like palettes there on the left are ways that I think with place. They're sort of windows, again, an elaboration of this portal idea. So the one on the right with the red right in the middle, that's from, all of those pigments are from Hormuz Island in Iran. And my friend Hannah gathered them and brought them back for her practice. She's a Persian, Iranian and English, or London, I think she's lives in London now, painter, but she shared those with me, and they're just like, this island is, anyways, it's like when I look at this, I feel like I can be transported to this place. This is another way that I think some people have seen my ochres displayed. These are like, this is like, to me, is looking at a council of ancient wisdom beings that are my ancestors, that each have personalities and that are telling me about the core of the earth and its lifetime somehow. And I know that sounds a little bit extreme, but if you don't know, the dominant elements of earth are iron, oxygen, and silicon. Those are the three most dominant elements by mass that our planet is made of. And the core of our planet is made of iron, and the surface has a lot of oxygen and silicone in it. And of course, our atmosphere, what allows us to breathe, is oxygen. So you can think about the earth as, or you can think about ochres as kind of like a microcosm of the planet, a way to like elementally be in touch with the heart of the earth. And so when I see this, it's almost like I'm seeing, a heartbeat of the earth at a certain time, or a gesture towards being able to relate to earth, right? In this way that we can understand and hold in touch. That's not so, how do you relate to a whole planet? How do you have empathy for a planet? It's just a close-up. And again, these are like this big. So when my archive isn't something where I'm gathering huge amounts, these are literally vials of dust that will blow away if you open them, and you'll never be able to find them. This is just a fun, like this is my desk. This is where I think with ochre. There used to be a map of the world behind all of that, where I used to put fingerprints of the ochre that I would receive from my friends. But it's just sort of gotten covered up with letters and marks and ways that I'm trying to think with ochre. The plant there's a bunch of wheat and chamomile right there. I'm really into wheat and chamomile right now, and especially wheat, thinking a lot about wheat as a binder, which I will come back to. And speaking of binders, this is my tiny little binder corner. Kathy and Amy, we were sort of talking about how binders and ochres, and we're all really interested in these relationships between pigments and the viscous material that they bond with to make all kinds of creative material. And these are just like where I have miniature doses of that. So if you don't know, ochre as a pigment can bind with several different mediums, most mediums out there, and it actually changes the behavior of how ochre functions more than the color. So when you're working with ochres, it's not, for me, color is kind of one of the last things I think about, and actually the capacities are what I think about. So for example, if you bind ochre with gum arabic, you can get watercolor paint, but you can also get a high level adhesive depending on how you mix it and how you grind it. So you can get something that strengthens a glue as much as you can paint with it. Ochre also mixes with, like for example, shea butter is over here, and shea butter is one of the things you can make lipstick with, or cosmetics. Ochre is a really, we've been using ochre as a cosmetic for this whole time, 300,000 years, and you can mix it with plant oils, with vinegar, with alcohol, with bone marrow, with fats, with gum, with like there's mastic gum here, all kinds of things. Anyways, these are just, I pulled these out because they're all around my studio, but if you were in my studio, you'd see I have a lot of mortar and pestles, because all I really do is have these rocks and grind them. So I literally, my whole life is crushing rocks and making dust, or not, or just living with these rocks. And so these mortars, you can kind of think about them like cast iron pans. Each of them sort of has been seasoned with a certain particular type of ochre most of the time. And so for example, the little ones, those are all like, I only use one for red ochres. I only use the blue for blue ochres, and I never switch them around. And they all have different weights too. So when you have really hard stones, there's different tools you want to use than if you have really gentle soils. I just wanted to throw this out there because I find this really interesting, and it's something that I meditate on when I'm working. So when I'm grinding, I think a lot about how I'm weathering rocks. I'm becoming a weather system on these rocks. Naturally, in the environment, we get soil or we get dust from natural weathering of big geologic things, from rain, from wind, and from other long durations of action. And so when we quickly grind up a rock, we're basically weathering it that would have something that could have taken 100,000 years to do. But what's really interesting about weathering rocks into soil or into pigment is that on a bigger scale, what this quote says is, weathering rocks, breaking them down with carbon-rich water, is one of the planet's most effective long-term mechanisms for removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And a couple of my scientist friends, they're doing this on a huge scale. They're basically trying to expose really particular kinds of rocks and help draw down the atmosphere into the sediment, so that the carbon can go back into the sedimentary carbon cycle, as opposed to being up in the atmosphere, right? So when I'm like in my tiny, like mustard seed of a practice, I'm like, okay, on some level, I'm hoping I'm drawing down the carbon into this dust, and I'm also offering it back as dust. I'm not really trying to make a big industrial scale of anything. And I want to go through a few just examples of how I make pigment, and what I make for other people. I get a lot of people are like, what do you do with all your pigments? And I basically make them for other people. So this is a project I loved where I was working with an architecture firm in Seattle that does a lot of sustainable building, or at least tries to. And they were working with only local Washington geology, and they wanted to have pigments from every geologic period that Washington has gone through where I live. So essentially the left four pigments are ones that I sought out in landscapes that are from the Cretaceous period, so super ancient. And then each of these, as you move through this gradation, you're actually looking at like 200 million years of time kind of captured and distilled in these pigments. And then they're going to use these as inspiration to make essentially what rammed earth walls, which is where you have larger amounts of soil that get crushed together and create essentially like a cement wall, but has a lot more breathability, is not so dangerous to the environment in its extractive. Cement is like a whole gnarly art form. So this was an offering to that, which I thought that was it. Like I just made them this research project. And then I think a lot of people have seen this. If you follow me on Instagram, I make personal pigments for people where they don't feel like they have access to, say, their ancestral territory or a landscape that they really wanted to visit, or even an imaginal realm that they want to have distilled into a pigment they can turn into their primary medium. So for some people it's oil paint, for other people it's ceramics, and for some people it's watercolors. So these are an example of a set of pigments I made for someone who we had a conversation and sort of figured out what might be motivating or spiritually or soulfully compelling for them to work with in their own practice. These are some other examples of paints I've made every once in a while. They're just ochre mixed with water and sometimes a little bit of gum, but you don't need anything more than that, really. These are some recent examples of other things I'm doing in my studio, where I'm taking ochres and binding them with wheat paste, which is essentially flower water or the field. So I'm taking the soil and then the field and water and putting them together, and it makes essentially natural earth-based paint, or if you can put it on walls, it can be something you could distribute in a field like fertilizer. You can do all kinds of things with just wheat, water, and ochres. And so these are some experiments. It also is super, because of the gluten, it can bind big textures to stone. So essentially you can leave a pigment very unground and it will stick to anything, which is something I love, because I think one of the things that I struggle with in the pigment world is that people often want to grind their pigments down really smooth. And I feel like the farther you take the pigment away from the geologic core where it's from, the more and more abstracted it's getting from it in a way. I mean, and yes, you could say the more and more like pure energy or color you're getting, but you're kind of missing there's a lot of gradation in how you can grind something and its particle size and what it can do and how it feels texturally, sensually, all of those things. So I like to think about that. And I'm just throwing this out there for you because every once in a while I've done some work for people where I'm thinking about ochres in terms of mud dye or in terms of integrating with fibers or plant-based textiles. And this is just some experiments with a soy binder and linen. And then this is how I often work with my pigments. I don't grind them up at all. These are my crayons. So all of these rocks draw directly on surfaces of things. They're soft, they're malleable. They've already been weathered enough by the landscape and the wind to become soft and pliable on their own. Okay, how are we doing on time? Let me see here. Ooh, All right, I'm gonna move you guys through the field, but I wanna leave, we're about halfway through and I wanna leave time for a lot of interactions.
You're good, Heidi. You're good.
Okay, cool. I want to just take you out and show you some things that you can learn about ochres in the field, or that I think is important to honor, that there's so many things you can only learn by being in the landscape that you can't really learn by holding the pigment abstracted from that place or taken out of the context. So this is just one of the world's most important kaolin mines from the ancient world in the Mediterranean in Milos. And I got to go there with a wonderful local guide, Julie, who, if you're out there anywhere, I miss you. And what you know, if you think about kaolin, it's a pure white material. And you don't imagine that like a main mine, an ancient mine, would be anything except this white material. But when you're in the landscape, you start to see that, like, there's not actually a single material at all in these places where we're extracting a single material or relating to the land in its dominant color or form. So this is what the ground is like around a kaolin mine. It actually has this huge, I mean, I don't know if your eyes can see this, or if like when I see this, I'm like, there's so many different minerals from so many different things. There's these blue ones and purple and red and yellow and like beige and like it's a whole slew, which we then distill out and kind of purify to be kaolin. But that's not what, the landscape doesn't convey that. This is another really important thing when you're in the land that you notice, is that ochre often will have its binder plants or its binder animals or its binder, like the things it wants to hang out with are in the landscape with it. So this is an image of ochre that's exposed in the soil, and the root that you see there is the mastic bush. And mastic is one of the most important gums in the Mediterranean tradition, especially on Milos, where not only can it make ink, like it makes delicious alcohol, but it's a sticky, it's a sticky gum you can chew. It's one of the main like teeth cleaners, and it makes a gum for all the rest of the things we can use gum for, paints and adhesives. So, but when you see this in the landscape, I think, okay, these ochres want to bind with mastic. They don't need to be bound with gum arabic or anything that's like from some other place. Like they have their own, the ecological system is really intact in terms of its creative power. And I find this across ochres. So like other ochre landscapes will have acacia trees, which is what gum arabic comes from. And then other landscapes have like cows all over them. And you're like, I guess I might have to think about using, fat rendering with this ochre. So this is just another way that I want to things you can recognize in the field. Like if you see this, you're like, okay, this is colorful soil, but I don't really know what's going on. But when I was there with Julie, who was my guide, she explained this to me. She was like, this is actually a terracotta vessel. You can kind of see the rim of the red. This is an ancient terracotta vessel, like huge, that used to have probably wine or a liquid or something in it that has then, this is maybe 1,000, 2,000 years old, I'm not sure. It has been mineralized over time and returned into soil and sedimented. So what you're looking at is like a historical terracotta vase with liquid in it or makeup or something, we don't know, wine. And, but if we extract a piece of this and take it to work with, like you're carrying that cultural history, and you can't really know that or relate to that unless you've been in the land with someone who also is intimate with that place. This is a way that I learn about things in the field. This is a place where you cannot gather ochres because it's A, illegal, B, it's an indigenous place that it's not ethical, and there's a whole other slew of things. But you can, like when you're walking around on the path, it gets on your shoes and it's going to get tracked out anyway. So I will like put my finger on the bottom of my shoe and put it on my paper. And this is like clay ochre where I get to have a memory of the whole place and a feeling of the place without having to extract anything. And this is literally like clay-based paint. This will bind to the page. This isn't going to fade. This is going to stay there forever. And I do this a lot in other landscapes where I take little bits of the geology off my shoe, or if it's weathering into the ocean, right where it's at the wave. And then I just make a mark in my notebooks. Like, this is my studio research. And in this case, the geology behind it is what's making those colors. And I love this. Like, this is the other thing about being in the field. You often will see something that looks like a gray landscape. And this is just another printed version of that same one you just saw. It looks like a gray landscape at first, but if you actually have long-term intimate relationship with the place, you start to see that within it is all of this diversity and different moods. And so those pigments on the right are all the pigments I've found from that gray looking geology on the left over time, because I have a personal relationship with this place. And it's a lot like any relationship with anyone or any being. You have to let them talk to you and spend time with little bits and spend time with stuff you're like, I don't know what this is. Like, how do I deal with this? And then you eventually are like, oh, you have Vivianite inside of you? Like, you have crazy blue pigment in there? And so this is just an iteration of that. A lot of landscapes, and especially riverbeds, will have water exposure of ochres, but you don't recognize it first. But then if you rub them or crush them or offer them back to the river and spend time at the river, you'll get to see how the rainbow of that place really opens up. So this is this landscape, which is a river in Oregon, exposed more. And a lot of times I just leave these as offerings behind in a place. I don't need to gather them, but then on the other way around, there are some places where the color is extremely obvious. Like, this is a red ochre landscape of ancient red soil. But in these landscapes, there's other things you can learn. Like in this landscape, there was this tiny little robin's egg in the middle of, or not robin's egg, bird egg in the middle of this like desert red hill holding the ochre in it. And I was like, oh, that's how the ochre is supposed to be used. Like, probably needs to be mixed with egg yolk, probably needs to be held in a tiny seed of an egg. Like, so it's not about, oh yes, I get a bunch of red ochre. It's like, oh, this is how to tend to this ochre. So that's like how much I'll take, this little shell of ochre, right? Or how much I'll gather. And then, you know, people, this is just another way that I work with the landscape, and people call it like ochre whispering or something, where I'm like having a more like spiritual or soulful connection to the place and trying to learn things through other organs of perception besides my eyes or my nose or my ears. But this is one where I'm like, I literally have my hand in this ochre rock, and just there's nothing I can verbally say is happening, but it's like my hand is getting this education from the rock. And then I turn around and I'm like walking around, and then my hand like goes down and picks up a black rock, which I'm like, well, I would never look at this, but it turns out it's magnetite. So it's magnetic black ochre. And I thought this landscape only had red, like a reddish ochre, right? But by putting my hand in and letting my hand learn from the big, like kind of this mama rock, it like got magnetized, and I found and like I can work with the magnetic ochre. So there's other ways to relate to the land besides, this is another, just like this one is, I was with a bunch of women soil scientists, and we're on a regenerative agriculture farm here. And you have to build soil pits sometimes to get to know how your soil is working if you're having effective agricultural practices, seeing how the carbon is moving, seeing how the organisms and the mycorrhizal activity is. And this is one where we just like went in the soil pit, and this is a way that scientists relate to the soil. These women scientists, they sit in it for like 5 minutes and just experience being in the earth, like buried like 6 feet under. And that's a way that they connect to the soil. And this is another way that I've learned from them how to like be in the presence of the land. Okay, there's a couple more like just stories I could tell about ways to be with the land, but I'm going to kind of move through these back to my studio so we can get some questions and some hangout time. These are some samples from my studio that I wanted to like hone in on, but I'd rather hear from you all. And these are just some letters of people that have sent me materials that I thought were really funny. This one's Vivianite from a sewage plant. And these are just some samples of letters I've gotten with samples of ochres from around the planet. This is one from this is Kokowai from my friend Sarah, who's Maori in what's now called New Zealand. She's doing amazing work over there. This is a sample from my friend Jason Logan with like this beautiful letter, and he called it the broken fingers of the Badlands. So I love this. And lastly, I just wanted to do a shout out to my sister. This is a sample I have in my studio that my sister gave me, who's a research scientist at the Allen Institute in Seattle. So she's an immunologist, which sounds like it's a world apart from me. And immunologists basically study how our insides respond to infectious disease like COVID or the plague or any other like things. And one of the projects she does is she uses white ochre, a synthesized white ochre called lapinite, which is here down there in the middle, which is a synthesized version of smecite, which is what is in those hills behind that picture. She takes that ochre and she takes basically gelatin, like animal fat or animal rendering, binds them and creates like or what's called organoids, which are pretend lymph nodes that they put cells into so the cells can live longer and they can see how they're interacting better and they can solve problems like COVID vaccines with this method, which I think is really cool, where I think a lot of people think our pigment worlds like are kind of limited to the arts, but basically in the sciences, they're doing the same thing we're doing. They're taking a binder and a pigment and then they're making it so we can solve, like work on the problem of how to have creative lives and have life force. Okay, let's get into it. We have time. Let's do some questions. This is just like my last thing is an image of my vision of where this sanctuary is going. It's in my notebook. My long-term project is to build an actual architectural sanctuary where a lot of these ochres will live, and it kind of looks like this, but that's like 10 years down the road. So
Heidi, thank you.
Yeah,
that is fantastic.
Cool. So like if there's people out there who want to engage in really specific aspects, I know that's I just dumped a bunch of ochre on you, but I figured we could
I've got questions prepped and ready for you here.
Yeah, so if you'd like to stop sharing, the screen will see you full. There we go. And Amy will, I saw them all starting to flutter through, so.
Yeah, I just want to make sure.
How was that? Was that too much ochre?
No, that was
never
like
too much. It was
I could
really
have gone
lovely.
ochre crazy.
Yeah, so
I
beautiful.
want to make sure that I have you. Okay, you're on the spot. You're spotlighted still. Okay, good. All right, I'm just going to jump in. So Amber's asking, what are some ways we could use ochres to connect with our ancestors?
Well, it depends. It depends which ancestors you want to connect to, right? So if you want to connect to your personal human ancestors, then I feel like that's by going to the places those ancestors have spent a lot of time in. So connecting to the land that your ancestors are from. If you want to connect to ancestors that are before that, like other creatures, like the non-human beings that give rise to human beings, that's a different practice. And then if you want to connect to ancestors in a spiritual way through ochres, that again is a different, there's all these nuances of how to do it. But I think the most basic way is to hold a piece of ochre from a place that you feel your ancestors are connected to, whatever your definition of ancestors is, and start with that.
Thanks. I remember talking with Melanie one time and she was talking about that connection with ochres, and somebody from another state had asked her, to do something with like a ceremonial drum. It was
Mm.
some, I forget what tribe the person was from. And she said, absolutely not. Find the ochres that are from where you're from and connect in that way.
Yeah.
It was interesting. Melanie's great. How can we send you ochre? I've been collecting Cretaceous material from, I'm going to go with New England for any, but
Sorry, it's Nebraska.
Nebraska. It
I'm,
could have
I'm
been
the person asking. Yeah, it's Nebraska.
Okay.
Yeah, so you just like send me a message on Instagram or send me an email, and I think we'll put them up there like when this recording goes up. But just start by sending me that, and then I'll send you my address. I don't put because my studio is my home and my address is my address, I don't put it out in the public until you like reach out to me, and then yeah, you can send it to me. It'll come live with these other ochres, and then just to let you know, sometimes if you send me an ochre and someone does come to me and say, I need to connect to this place in Nebraska, I'll be like, I'll check in with you sometimes, or sometimes I won't. I'll send off some of what you've sent to someone else. So it can end up being this long chain of dust moving around the globe. So.
Sure, it would just be a genuine gift that you could pass on any way you liked. But I just wanted to say how much I enjoyed your talk. So I thought I would send you something to add to it. If you'd be
Yeah, I would
interested.
love to feel it. That's awesome.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Right. So I know how you're going to answer this question, but I'm just going to say, do you sell ochres in the UK?
Do I sell ochres in the UK?
Yeah, I know you have on your site, like,
Yeah.
which is there's wait list for, but
I try not to sell my ochres, except if you feel really called to get these personal pigments for your practice. I do make those, but most of the time I try to trade with people. And yeah, ochres can go anywhere in the world. I mean, they already do. So I can definitely trade in the UK.
all right.
Yeah.
I don't know what Lisa's referring to, but she's asked, tell us about those black pieces hanging on the wall.
Oh, the ones that have the little dots in them. I think that's what there was like an image where there's a bunch of black pieces on the wall that have colored dots in the middle. Those are, I was trying to relate to the carbon cycle through ochre. And so the background of those is a coal that's been extracted, that was in an extractive practice, and something that is like a hydrocarbon that we would burn that's causing a lot of the carbon problems. And then I was putting different ochres on top of the carbon with just water to see how they relate. Because I think ochre and climate change have a lot to talk to each other about and teach us about, because ochre has been right there in human evolution every time we've gone through a mass extinction or through an evolution of our thinking or our physiology. So I was just playing around with that.
All right. We always look, Kathy and I always somebody always asks about what's that behind you, or it could be in your studio too. So I'm glad we got that question out of the
Awesome.
Can you tell us how you use the wheat as the binder? Do you use flour or grind the grains from the plant into a flour?
Both ways. So there's an abandoned wheat field right in my neighborhood because I live in these rural farm country. So I gathered a bunch of this abandoned wheat and we'll grind it up into flour. And then you just mix it with basically warm water till it gets thick. But you could also start with flour. There's a local like sustainable organic wheat growers farmers that I get their flour directly already milled too. So yeah, wheat and Kathy and I were talking, you can also like wheat bran is also has an important relationship with ochre. So the bran itself can be mixed with mud, and that helps to basically facilitate these organisms over a much longer scale. So there's a lot of ways to work with wheat.
Good Lord. This is like another rabbit hole. Oh boy.
It's like a wormhole after wormhole after wormhole.
Yeah, really.
At the end of the day, I'm like a dust. What can I say?
Basically, we just went from being artists to scientists, though, and climate activists. Okay.
All there.
Okay. Can you tell what kind of ochre you find most in the Seattle area? What color is it?
In the local area that I live, which is a couple hours north of Seattle, we are in a interglacial land. So that means that glaciers have come over it and melted and come over it and melted. And so we have a lot of sedimented clay. So you can think about when this water melts, or like when you have a lake bed or something that dries up, you get this really fine material on the top where it's like basically the softest, tiniest particles. And then it gets sandier after that. And then maybe more, there's all these like rocks mixed in from the power of the glacier. So the colors are like, you can get a whole range of colors in those materials. So we can, like the first image I showed you, which is a whole rainbow, that's all from the greater Northwest area. It just depends where in this interglacial landscape you're working. But yeah, mostly gray, I guess, is the color.
I'm excited for you to answer this question too. Miss Polly is asking, can you please talk a bit about your current dialogue, interest, relationship, alliance, delvings with chamomile? And thank you. Your presentation holds such heft, potent land-based poetry.
Oh, sweet. Well, so the chamomile was growing wild in the wheat fields. And like I was saying, when you're in the land, you start to be like, well, what's going on with these things growing together? So I haven't done a lot, but what I'm thinking is that, or what it made me think of was that when we make tea, or, you know, you add a flower to water, it gives it what we call a flavor, but it also has active principles that does stuff to our body. So I was imagining, like, instead of just mixing wheat with water to make wheat paste, or this, you could say this with any binder, instead of just mixing the binder with the water or however you're doing it, if you make chamomile tea first out of it, which is chamomile water, and then put the wheat in and see what kind of activities that does, it might just simply be that it smells cool. But it might, so I'm just experimenting with how these different flowers that grow with the binder plants might add to the water and what they'll do. So I haven't really figured it out.
Okay, I am excited about that. All right, when you mix wheat water in the ochre, does it tend to catch fungus?
No. If you are mixing wheat with ochre and it's done in layers that get to dry out, the fungus doesn't develop as much. But if you kind of leave it as its own kind of almost like a kombucha mother or something, then it will facilitate these fungal communities. But you can also, there's certain ways where you can you might want those fungal communities to come and start participating, and in other cases you might not. So I'm also like, yeah, generally no though, but if you leave wheat paste on its own, it'll definitely mold.
Okay. I know we're getting close, Kathy, to 5 of, I see that there's 27 new messages or 27 new questions. I'm not going to get to them all, but I feel like, you know, if Heidi, if you want to, after I can collect them, if you want to answer them, or a handful after this, and I can include it in the video recording.
Sure.
But I think this might be a nice one to kind of wrap things up with, which would be Amy Tucker's asking, would love to know more about your vision for the sanctuary.
Oh, thanks for asking. Yeah, it's a vision that I've had for a really long time that kind of came to me along with ochre itself. And it's essentially a big round earth building that has all these niches in it, and it's modeled after columbariums or pigeon houses. If you've ever seen that architecture, it's all these niches kind of rubbed into the wall. And historically, it's where doves would come in and roost. And it's also where people will put the ashes of the dead. But in the ochres, this future ochre sanctuary, each of these ochres will sort of be put in one of the niches and rubbed in and kind of hold its energy. And there will be no jars anymore. And then there will be no, like, all of that will be gone. And it'll just be the ochres in these niches. People will be able to walk in and experience this sort of almost like a ovary or something, or like an organ of perception where the ochres are all in their niches, just sort of having an affect. I hope that doesn't sound too woo-woo, but like it has this, there's a quality about how these ochres will be. It's almost like making an acupuncture pinprick in the earth, for the earth, of the earth. That's my sort of like part of my vision. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense. And I will buy the first ticket to come to come there
It's gonna
with
happen.
Kath.
Yeah. You'll be there before that. You'll probably be there in the middle of building. I'll be like, I need you to help me put this
We
mud
can
on
build.
the bed.
Kathy and I can build things with you. We're good at that together. Right, Kathy? We've done all kinds of farm work and all kinds of things together.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I feel like most of the people I'm gonna call on all my people from over, be like, okay, now it's your turn to come here and help me.
there's some amazing folks who will replaster the mosques in West Africa with mud, and it is that sort of slightly sort of rounded spike, lots of insets, beautiful, and then the supports in it are these beams made of peeled logs. It's so beautiful. When
Yeah.
you said that, I thought, oh my goodness, that's going to be amazing.
Yeah, I'm trying to learn a little bit. I'm just starting a relationship with a friend of mine who works with with a woman who's from Botswana, who is a traditional mud house
Nice.
worker. And so I'm hopefully I'll get some mentorship from someone who's been in that tradition for a long time. Yeah.
Super
right.
cool.
Well, thanks, Heidi.
Thank you.
Thank
all.
you.
It was really wonderful. Well, I'm sort of still like basking in that ochre glow. It was so amazing. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
I just have a few reminders, and then I'm going to talk about who's presenting next week. But this is my little script that Amy prepares for me, so I don't go too far off script here. Yeah, so speaking of pigments and ochres, we have Natalie Stopka, who'll be leading a 2-day Zoom workshop next week. And today is the last day to register. I think we only have 2 or 3 spots left. And the ochres that we're using are French derived. So it's a yellow ochre and also a brown ochre from Cyprus. And then we'll also be using Maya Blue that we made here in the studio. So those are the 3. And we'll be using soy as a binder. So this is going to be a really fun class. If you can join us, we'd love to have you. Sasha Durr's workshop, we've kept open for a few more days because hers isn't until October. So if you'd like to join us for that, please do. And we also have another workshop with Samantha Verone. And this is going to also be exploring the world of iron and the use of iron on textiles. And so she'll be doing a rust dyeing workshop where you'll be able to transform old textiles into amazing new pieces of art under her guidance. So check that one out as well. The other thing is that we have 2 books that have been pretty popular, and we sort of ran low on them, but we're now getting restock on them. One is Seaweed Research, which some of you joined us for this amazing presentation with Nienka. And so that's coming back. She had to get it reprinted. And then also The Way of Indigo with Takayuki Ishii. That book is also somewhere on a DHL truck. So I should be getting replacements soon, like today or Monday. And that's also available. And finally, we've got a trove of this beautiful indigo dyed 40s weight muslin cotton fabric that's, I think, is perfect. It's dark enough to be still kind of a late summer, early autumn color to be wearing, as it's lightweight. It's that 40s, beautiful 40s muslin, but it could also be used as like a lining or the backing of a piece that you're interested in. So that's there too, and we put it on sale. And finally, to announce for next week, we are really, really happy to have botanical printer Erie Dalman. Erie is from Tel Aviv, Israel, and she's going to be talking about her method of eco printing. And those, I've heard of Erie many, many times, never have met her, but I've seen her work. It's absolutely beautiful. I think she really encourages people to move the work in a very interesting and different, much more graphic way, and it's stunning results. So don't miss that. And with that, we're going to open it up so people can say hello and goodbye. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Heidi.
Thank you. That was amazing.
Heidi, it was so great.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. It was wonderful.
Thanks. It was great.
Thank you. I love these feedback
Thank you.
Fridays.
Great. As the daughter of a geologist, I really enjoyed it. Connects my
Yay.
style work with my father's work. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well,
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you,
Bye.
Heidi.
Thank you.
Scott the rooster.
Thank you.
That was
fabulous.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Really great.
Thank you. That was
Loved it.
fantastic. Thank you.
Great.
Thank
Yeah. Loved it. Loved it.
That was very, very interesting.
Yeah.
You want to do it today?
I know.
Yeah. Everyone start going out for walks and staring at the ground.
I know.
Yes.
All I ever
I like Heidi though, your idea of finding if it's on your shoe or kind of being very careful about what you are taking. I think you made that very clear. I know some people were asking questions about that, which, you know, we could.
Yeah. How large of a shovel should I bring?
No, Kathy.
Oh, I should have said I use no tools. I forgot to say that. I
Oh,
don't.
you said it now. It's still recording.
Ah.
Yeah, I don't. I
Oh,
only.
I thought you said bring a shop vac. Shop vac?
Shop vac. Yeah. And a really long extension cord.
Yeah. And put it on your back as a backpack.
And a vacuum cleaner.
Shop vac backpack.
That might, yeah, or like the other way is like a flamethrower, because you could just heat up a whole landscape and change
Oh,
color
yeah.
while you're out there.
That's already happening.
That's happening thanks to other people. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other people who don't care about the ochre or the connection to land,
Mm.
right?
Wow. Yes,
Well, all
absolutely.
right.
Okay.
Can't not say hi, Mom.
Hi, Ellie.
Hi. I like yellow ochre. I didn't know it came in all those colors.
Kathy, you're the best.
Oh,
Thank you.
Really are.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We love this community. It's so nourishing. It's been a summer. We started out with so much joy and now we're like, oh God.
Kathy, there's joy.
It's-
Don't
it's
bring
there.
us down from our Heidi.
No, I'm not gonna bring it down. I'm
We're
really
so high
good.
from Heidi.
You have to
So
look at
high from Heidi.
geological time. You look at it that way, it's not so
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah. That's a great perspective.
and-
Keep it in.
And you know what? There are I see tiny shifts happening, just of late in small places, things are shifting. People are making shifts. And I
Yep.
think,
Yep.
like I just,
Somebody is
the largest school district in California just mandated vaccines for all their students over 12 years old. So
yeah.
that they can't come back live to school unless they get vaccinated. So, it's a shift.
It's
Yeah.
happening. I mean, I think there was a speech yesterday where it was made pretty clear that
Yeah. Yes.
it's
There have been a couple of speeches this week on a couple of different
Yeah.
topics.
yes.
Speeches.
Yes. Yeah. Constitutionality matters.
Yeah. How about that one?
Yeah.
And this
Yeah.
vigilante stuff has got to stop.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
The heck?
What? Okay.
All
Mom, you can look
right.
at your hair later. Okay.
My horns are sticking out.
Wait. I like
You
that.
don't wanna
I like that
leave.
We can hear Betsy's.
Oh, yeah, I know. I
know that
slept on
that's
my hair
different.
funny and so it's all wet out.
Here we go. We're going back
right.
we'll go back to the tricks that we can all do now, where we
All
first
right.
started from, the origins.
Oh
of
yeah,
this
you do
conversation
the
with Heidi.
tricks. I'm gonna make you host.
I'm gonna blast on out of here like you
Are
are.
ya?
Oh, I
Okay,
Yeah.
well, you're hosts. Oh wait,
Me
so then
too.
make me host.
Wait, are we all leaving? What's
Yeah, we're leaving.
I'm gonna stop the
Amy,
recording.
yeah.
Stopping the recording.
Can I
Get
take
ready
you-
for the
you
weird
make
voice.
me-
Here we go.